Hey, good Wednesday, I guess still morning, and welcome into the 573 report, also known this week as the last thing I have to do for the next 48 hours. Knock on wood. We have put out a polite request on our Tuesday recruiting show that any recruits who decide to commit, please not do so on Thursday. We will see how that goes. If there is breaking news this afternoon or Thursday, we will cover it. But to be honest, we are rooting against breaking news for the next 48 hours. Busy time for 573 Tees, who sponsors this show every single week. Actually, just saw a tweet about 10 minutes ago that said they are upgrading their website. Hopefully, by this afternoon, they will have options of in-store pickup and uploading custom designs for your own T-shirts. So keep an eye on 573tees.com. I would imagine there might be some Black Friday or holiday specials coming up. It's the time of year that you need to buy things for people. And for the Mizzou fans in your life, what better idea than checking out 573Tees, 573tees.com for some Christmas gear and help out a Power Mizzou sponsor and all good things there. So speaking of holidays, we have one on Thursday. Mitch, we're getting everything done in advance so that we can get settled in on our respective couches by about, I guess it's 2:30 this year on CBS. Has that game not always been played at 1:30? Am I making that up?
I'm not totally sure. I feel like there's been at least once or twice it was earlier, like more like noon or 11. But I don't know. It all kind of runs together. It's always just like a gloomy, gray, sleety type day, the day after Thanksgiving. So one of those days where like time doesn't really matter. It's just like the sun sort of comes up, hides behind the clouds for a little bit, then it sets again.
Right, fair. Somebody said it was actually going to be like 50 degrees. I don't think this game is contractually allowed to be played in nice weather. Some of the most miserable days in the history of the states of Missouri and Arkansas have been the Friday after Thanksgiving with this game. But I don't know. We'll start with football. We'll talk a little basketball later. And if you guys have questions or comments, feel free to put them in the comments section. We will certainly get to them in the second half of the show. Appreciate you joining us live while you're probably either trying to leave your office or not actually even in your office for the full day. But this game, to me, Mitch, is the difference between saying you salvaged the season and actually maybe having a good season. Like, it seems weird, but 8 wins is technically still on the table here for this team.
Yeah, it is weird. I mean, especially because a couple weeks ago, people were talking about this being a 4-win team. And even I, at one point, not too long ago, was saying I would probably be a little bit surprised if they even got to 6. Not that it was impossible, but that, I thought that there was a less than 50% chance. So, yeah, obviously that's a good thing. And we talked a little bit on Monday about, does it feel more gratifying to get to 6 wins given how they got there, or is it still disappointing based on what your preseason expectations were? And while obviously that's up to the individual, it's also the season's not over. Like, we could still get to theoretically the 8-win mark a lot of people were talking about, or the 7-win mark that I was talking about coming into the season. So yeah, I think that getting the 6th win is always more important than 7. Even even if you expected to win more than 6, 7's nothing like that's gonna get you to a New Year's Six bowl or anything like that, and 6 is going to get you to a bowl. So that's the more important one. But I think this would go a long way towards just kind of the program being able to sell a step forward.
Yeah, 6 is more important, but I feel like there's a bigger difference between 6 and 7 than there is 5 and 6. I mean, at 7 and 5, and bowl games are a crapshoot. If you win them, you kind of sell them. If you lose them, you kind of just say you were 7 and 5 and you pretend they didn't happen. But at 7 and 5, you've had a winning season. You finished with, I guess that would be 4 wins in 5 weeks. You've beaten a ranked team like Arkansas is 25th in the college football playoff. So I feel like there's significant difference between 6 and 6 and 7 and 5. And would this be, like we talked last week, would probably be Missouri's most impressive win of the season? If they win this week, is this week the most impressive win of the season?
Yeah, I think so. Because I mean, Florida, yeah, they've got talent and they've got the name, but that was not a good team. I mean, like they got housed by South Carolina. They just fired their coach. Like they have issues, and this would be going on the road, which obviously has been an issue for Missouri. I believe they're, if I'm right, the only road game they've won this year is Vanderbilt, right? So yeah, that's that would definitely be, and it's, this, I mean, beating Arkansas always is going to be mean a little bit more than beating Florida. Like it's not a true rivalry yet. Obviously, it's not at the level of Missouri and Kansas, but you still got some Mizzou people and Arkansas people who rub elbows. You've got the personal connections of the former coach and the former players on Arkansas' side. So yeah, this would absolutely be the biggest win.
Yeah, and there's always going to be guys. I mean, we've talked about Trey Williams and Markel Utze, but like Jalen St. John, who Missouri recruited heavily, is down there. Dominique Johnson, who was committed to Missouri, and I think at least some people around him kind of indicated that Eli Drinkwitz did him wrong on the way out. Is he's run for 470 yards for Arkansas, so there's a lot of connections there. Obviously, Barrett Bannister and Akil Byers from Fayetteville. So, like he said, I mean, it's not a true rivalry yet. It's the closest thing Missouri has right now, and I think going forward it will be the closest thing they have, because I think we're going to get to a point pretty soon where they're not playing Kentucky every year and South Carolina every year. But I guess to me what stood out about it is I think this is, like, it's a rivalry, but I think there's actual respect there, right? I think Eli Drinkwitz respects what Sam Pittman has done. I honestly kind of respects Barry Odom as well. I mean, not just from the job he's done there, but, like, I would think he would respect the guy that left him Tyler Beatty on his roster, and the way he talked about the Arkansas players and team and coaches was, I think, different than the way he talked about Florida's maybe.
Yeah, for sure. I think two things. One, like the rivalry doesn't feel as forced anymore, which is kind of nice because there's some actual juice with Odom and the players and stuff. But it's not bad blood. That was very clear just talking to the players as well. Like, I think that I think fans sometimes, they don't understand. They say like, oh, that guy left, so he's going to be hated. Like, Martez Manuel and Trajan Jeffcoat were talking about Trey Williams and Markel Utze, and they like lit up. They're like, oh, I can't wait to see those guys. Those are our friends. Like, yeah, I want to beat them, but like, I'm super happy to see them. And so like, I think it's kind of a respect type thing, and both sides will want to win. Like, that's not going to impact anyone's motivation or anything like that. But yeah, even Eli Drinkwitz, he went out of his way to really, really speak highly of Sam Pittman and really speak highly of Arkansas. And Steve Wilkes called KJ Jefferson. He compared him to Cam Newton. I mean, like this, there very clearly is an effort to talk Arkansas up going into this game.
Right, because if you beat them, then look at the good team we just beat. Dr. Sanitary says I would rather have played the BC game later in the season. So I was thinking about this, regardless of whether it ends up 6-6 or 7-5. I really think there's 2 days that you look back on this season. The BC game is the first one. Like, in retrospect, Missouri should have won that game. Against a backup quarterback, BC hasn't turned out to be very good. That's one. And then the second one is just nobody's going to say it should have been a win. But the whole Tennessee thing hung over this. I feel like we're just now kind of getting to the point where people have forgiven or forgotten that a little bit.
Yeah, very true. I will say with the Tennessee game, like, I want to shy away from calling things blessings in disguise because I think that's overdone in sports. But like, the defensive lines looked a heck of a lot better with Al Davis at defensive line coach than Jethro Franklin. Like, I don't know, maybe they make that step anyway. Like, I have maintained that Al Davis doesn't know some technique that Jethro Franklin does it, but he's pushed some button that I don't think was being pushed before, and it's made a huge difference. So I don't know. Does that change happen? If the coaching change doesn't, who knows?
Right. So Missouri and Arkansas 2:30 on Friday. Friday is going to be a busy day because while Mitch is finishing up covering football, I will be over at Mizzou Arena for a much anticipated basketball game. I mean, I expect there to be dozens of Missouri fans who are excited to watch this basketball team. Here's the thing. I just hate that we're 5 games in and it's already what it is. I mean, and I think this is worth talking about a little bit. So they got beat by Florida State by 23 points on whatever night that was, Monday night. And I think the thing was, that it wasn't surprising and it wasn't even really disappointing, and you knew that was going to be the result, like, as soon as the ball tipped. And that's the program that 4 years ago Conzo Martin said, I want to model. Like, that's the model. And just in no way is Missouri. I mean, you can't look at them and say, even, I think that team is trying to be that team. Like, they don't do any of the same things on any of the same levels.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, like you said, 5 games in. I mean, really, we were 2 games in when the season became this. And that was the take from the UMKC game, which was just kind of a bummer for us because we still have to cover every game. But, yeah, I mean, like, my takeaway from Monday was just like, Missouri looks a lot more like Central Michigan or Northern Illinois than it does Florida State. And like, yeah, Florida State's a good team for sure. I think they're probably in the long run, probably a top 25, top 20 team. And I think that, they're super athletic, and they will have games like that against ACC teams probably, where they just overwhelm them and get them sped up and take advantage of points off turnovers and dunk the ball 47 times and win by a lot. But it wasn't even close. I mean, it was a total athletic mismatch. It looked like a low major team playing against a high major team, just from an athleticism standpoint. And like, that's, I know you don't need me to tell you this, but that's not good.
Well, and really the optimism coming into the season, and I want to be clear, I don't think there was a ton of optimism. I don't think most people were picking this to be an NCAA tournament or a 20-win team. You had a few outliers here and there maybe, but even the path to, hey, let's be a little over 500 and be in the NIT was kind of geared toward, well, Deshaun Gordon is, like, he just needs a change of scenery. He'll be better than the 9-5 he was at Kansas State. And Ronnie DeGray is, kind of this hidden gem. And Amari Davis is a guy who can come in and give us offense and get to the rim. And, Boogie Coleman is Drew Smith. And to me, those last two have been the problem. I mean, look, there are problems all over. I don't want to isolate it to these two guys. But Amari Davis, away from the free throw line, has shown me nothing to indicate he is going to be able to score at a high level in the SEC. And Missouri just, if you've seen Drew Smith and Boogie Coleman's game, please point it out to me, because right now I don't think this team has a point guard.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think the lack of a point guard is the biggest issue. Yeah, I mean, like, teams can get better over the course of the season. We saw that with football. And it probably will happen with this team, with a bunch of guys who are new to each other and to the system and all that. But yeah, like, I don't think, obviously we're not talking about like 20 wins or anything like that. But even the NIT thing, like, I just don't see it because the schedule is so tough. And like I said, like, just from an athleticism standpoint, I don't see Missouri matching up with some of these. I mean, the Kansas, Kentucky, Illinois, Alabama, Arkansas, like those. I just mentioned that's like 8 of their games on their schedule, because they play a couple of those teams twice. So yeah, I don't know. I think the lack of point guard is glaring. I think that they don't have someone who can kind of settle the offense down and create for other people. Maybe Boogie Coleman can become that, but he really wasn't that at Ball State. And now moving up a level, I think that's kind of unrealistic to expect. Anton Brookshire, probably from a skill set standpoint, is the closest thing, but he's just not ready. I mean, he's a true freshman who didn't have any other high major offers. It was kind of unrealistic to expect him to be ready. And then I think the other thing is, and not that this is a shock, but is the center position, where Missouri kind of got exposed the other night. Florida State's a unique matchup. I mean, they have like 4-7-4 guys, all of whom can run the floor, which is a hard matchup for anyone. But it just kind of showed, like, when Missouri tried to go big, which Conzo said going in, he thought they would have an advantage there because Florida State switches 5 ways. So when you get a smaller guy switched onto a Jordan Wilmore or Yaya Keita, Missouri should be able to take advantage. They couldn't, because they couldn't match their athleticism. So then they tried to go smaller with like Ronnie DeGray or Kobe Brown playing the 5, and they couldn't match their size. And so, like, I think that just shows that, I mean, this team's ceiling is just really capped by the athleticism.
Yeah, somebody asked in my mailbag today if it's more likely that Mizzou football wins on Friday or Mizzou basketball gets to 14 wins. And I said the football game because it's one game versus 11 that the basketball team would have to win. But when you go through the schedule, I mean, I came up with 14 games that I can see Missouri winning, and that's Wichita State, Paul Quinn, Liberty, Eastern Illinois, Utah, Mississippi State, A&M, Ole Miss twice, Iowa State, Vanderbilt, A&M again, South Carolina, and Georgia. I mean, none of those teams are are like world beaters. There's not a single definite NCAA tournament team on that list, although honestly I don't think Missouri's going to win at Liberty because I do think Liberty is better, but that doesn't even include Illinois, which weird things happen. So I don't think they probably get to 14, but it is more possible than anyone wants to admit here right now, because the simple fact of the matter is there are going to be games that they're going to win that you look. I mean, believe it or not, there are going to be days they play well, I guess, which people have a hard time seeing.
I saw it against SMU, and SMU is not any great team by any means, but SMU is probably on the level of some of the bottom tier SEC teams. Like Mizzou, Mizzou's gonna, they're not gonna, it isn't gonna be a Kim Anderson team. And like, I get that, everyone's down and then everyone wants to be hyperbolic about, and just kind of express how miserable they are and upset they are about this team. Like, whatever, that's fine. But your argument kind of gets invalidated when you talk about winning single digit games.
Let's be clear, winning single-digit games is not impossible. Like, it could happen, but it's not a guarantee, so...
I think it's pretty unlikely.
Yeah. So let's hit some questions. We've already got, a few over there. If you've got one, hit us up, and we'll get to it here in the last 10, 15 minutes of the show. Josh Fan says, we've established Mizzou isn't any good this year, and we've also established Martin can't be fired for another year, but is there a path to this team being much better next year? And I want to be clear, it is not impossible that Cuonzo Martin loses his job after this season. I'm not interested in having the discussion every day between now and May 1st, but it's not impossible. But the bigger picture here, and this is why I think everybody's as down as they are, because, what is the path next year? I mean, the recruiting class doesn't have a guy that you look at and say, oh, he helps change the program, in his freshman season. The only thing you're losing off this team is Javon Pickett, who I understand he's been bad the last couple games, but overall probably is going to be one of your more consistent good players. This is the roster Cuonzo picked. A rebuild, a complete remake of the program in year 5 did not have to happen. He kind of chose for it to happen, and these are the guys he chose for it to happen with. And it's pretty much the same team next year. So I think everybody, you're upset about losing to UMKC and you're upset about what the rest of this year looks like. But you also just go, but I don't see where the step is. When do we get out of this? And I think that's the biggest reason for all the pessimism.
Yeah, I can understand that completely. And I think that's probably really the only compelling storyline to watch as we go through this season, right? Is who is showing hope for the future? Who can maybe take that next step next season? Who maybe needs to be shown the door or was a miss, and will the coaching staff move on? I will say this, and I know it's hard, but we really do need to keep in mind these guys have played 5 games in Missouri, and some of the true freshmen, Yaya Keita and Anton Brookshire and Sean Dewar-Gordon, they're not ready right now. They could be really good college players. I have no idea. It's not out of the question. I really like some of what Sean Dewar-Gordon brings to the table from just an athleticism standpoint, which is one of the things we're talking about what Missouri is lacking. I think Yaya Keita could definitely end up, maybe even by the end of this season, being a guy who can give you 20 minutes a game. I think the transfers, they could figure these things out, right? There was a point earlier this football season when we were saying, oh my gosh, who does Mizzou even have at linebacker or on the defensive line for next year? And now it's oh wait, Chad Bailey might be a pretty dang good player. So these things do evolve, and I think that's something we'll follow as the season goes on. But at the same time, this isn't a situation where you're looking at and saying oh, we can just go out and grab 4 or 5 guys from the transfer portal, because there's not room for that. You are either doing the same thing and admit next year and trying to strike gold in the transfer portal again and admitting you failed at that thing a year before, or you're running it back with the same guys and saying, I think they're going to take a step forward. And I wouldn't say there's a ton of optimism around either strategy.
Yeah, and that's my thing. I mean, the hoping to bring back the same guys and have them be better players, I think is the more likely thing, because
I agree.
You just did this start over. Now, look, some guys may leave on their own. You may end up having 2 or 3 spots and have to go get transfers. But, if this thing has to be significantly rebuilt, if you need a new roster next season, the guy who put together this roster to force you to need a new roster doesn't get to put together the new roster. Like, Konzo Martin needs these guys to be good. Because to me, he doesn't get to do this again. This was the rebuild, and he talked about being excited, and it was a fresh start. And I mean, we could see it in talking to Konzo. Like, and this is a concerning thing to me. Like, I think he really believed this was a good team. I really do. I think he felt good. Like, I don't think he thought they were winning 25 games, but he was energized in the offseason. And, you know, I always still go back to that team that finished under 500. He told like a million people they're good enough to win the SEC. Zero things about that team ever at any point in that season indicated to me they could even be in the upper half of the SEC, much less win it. You know, and then last year he made the, hey, if we're 10th in this league, it's the best league in history. And he's right. They weren't 10th. They were what, 7th? 6th?
Yeah.
Somewhere around there.
7th.
So they were better. He was right about that. But to me, it's reached the point where I don't even really pay attention to the preseason comments, because I don't know if it's just, hey, I'm trying to build my guys up, or if it's honestly not having a reasonable expectation of what he's seeing.
Yeah, no, that is very true. And yeah, I agree that, I mean, like, you know, you get coach speak, right? And we say this every year with every sport, like, don't necessarily read into everything the coach is saying. But like, in this case, it was like, you could tell it was fairly sincere, his energy and his excitement about this season, just by having spent some time around him and, you know, interacting with him. So yeah, I don't know what the disconnect is there. Maybe, I mean, you know, maybe he didn't think they were going to be great, but he just actually did enjoy like being around them. And like, he was like, yeah, we'll probably be bad early in the season, but I don't really care. I like the guys. Like, I don't know. Maybe that was his thought process. It is a little bit of a concern.
Yeah, and it will be interesting, and this is not the time to ask that question, but toward the end of the season, like, we have seen Eli Drinkwitz be very honest in the last 3 weeks. Hey, the expectations, the potential, it was oversold, and part of that's my fault. I mean, he has flat out said that. So it will be interesting if we're talking about a team in mid-February that's sitting like 8-17 or something. Like, that's the time to ask Konzo, hey, you seemed really to like this group. So what happened? Were you wrong, or where did it go? And the time to ask that question is not 3-2 on November 24th. There will come a time if we get there, but we've got to see if we're there. Let's go back to football for Robert's question. And this is one I think we could have tried to answer for 7 weeks, and I don't think we have an answer. But he says, is there any explanation for the Tennessee game? I went to that game, and I just can't overlook that debacle. And I don't know, man. I mean, I think, and I know Eli Drinkwitz got a little bit, I don't know what the right word is, defensive, you know, talking about how, you know, people shouldn't say that his team quit because they never quit. And on the season, he's right. But on that day, like, the only explanation I can come up with is they weren't really into it to start, and they did quit on that day. I mean, you don't get beat 62-24 without at least, I'm not saying they totally gave up, but there was some give up on the field that day.
Yeah, I think a few things happened. I mean, I don't think it's anything like crazy. I know sometimes everyone's like, oh, what's the explanation? Like, there was someone who like said something in the locker room that made everyone mad or something. Like, I don't think it's anything like that. I think what happened is Mizzou did not match up well with Tennessee's offense because they tried some weird 3-3 stack thing that Steve Wilkes has admitted. He actually said it makes him physically ill, and he threatened to throw up on you, I believe, as a result. But they just got punched in the mouth by Tennessee's offense, which scored 28 points in like 3 plays or something like that. That's not actually true because that's impossible. But and then they just kind of folded. And like Connor Bazelak threw a couple picks because probably he felt like he needed to score on every single play, and then it got out of hand in a hurry, and they just kind of stopped trying. So I would say that's the simplest and probably most likely explanation.
And I think we've reached a point in the season that you never, like, you can't take that game away. You don't forget that it happened, but you at least can look at it as more of an anomaly now and say, I'm not super worried that's going to happen. That's going to be like a regular thing going forward for Missouri.
Yeah.
Okay, the only other question I saw was from Dr. Sanitary. He says, what's your feeling on Mizzou's chances with Samuel Mpemba? Sean has a story on the site. He talked to Mpemba last night, and I don't know, but I think the feeling kind of is a little bit like you remember when we went through like a 2-week period where we thought Kevin Coleman was back on the radar? I think it's more serious than that because he actually did visit and all that, but I also kind of don't really think it's a situation where I'd say I think Missouri has a great shot. I mean, I saw he's visiting Illinois on Friday, so it strikes me a little bit like maybe he was on holiday break and he's like, yo, Mizzou's right here, I'll go check that out, and then Illinois is right here and I'll go check that out. They have a better chance than they did, but I'm not at all sure I feel like it's really a chance.
Yeah, I mean, I'll defer to you and Sean. Frankly, I've never talked to the kid.
I mean, neither have I. I want to be clear.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, like I kind of agree. Like when you've got schools of that caliber involved in it with a kid who's gone off to play at IMG, like it's possible. You do have the area connection, and I'm not saying Eli Drinkwitz can't land a 5-star. We just saw him do that with Luther Burden, but. Anytime Mizzou is in that kind of competition, the safe bet is to say, hey, it's kind of unlikely.
Yeah. So that is going to kind of wrap our live stuff for this week. Appreciate those of you who are on here watching. Hit the like button. If you listen on the podcast, which I'm going to put up after this, then give us many stars on the reviews. And Mitch, a whole lot of food the next 48 hours before one last. Like, does it seem weird to you that this, like, the football season about over?
Yeah, it's crazy. I feel like it always goes fast, but it seems like it was especially quick this year. It really does seem like just the other day we were covering fall camp. So, yeah, we're almost done. Of course, there's still bowl practices, bowl games, all that, but yeah.
And 4 months of basketball.
So. Yeah, well. I guess there's also some football recruiting sprinkled in there. Maybe that'll give us some.
every day of basketball seems like 4 months right now, but
kind of, yeah.
All right, Mitch. Well, have a good Thanksgiving, man, and thanks. We'll let you run, and we'll talk to you on Friday.
Yep. Happy Thanksgiving to you too.
All right, that is Mitchell Forde joining us here on the 573 Report. We are going to let him run and do whatever wonderful things he might have planned for the holiday. And I did kind of want to take this time to say thanks to all of you guys who have been a part of this and joined us. Last year, we started some of this streaming stuff because COVID kind of made it a necessity, right? I mean, we couldn't really go cover things, and we were, frankly, not even sure a lot of these things that we would normally cover were going to happen. So this was born out of, hey, we've got to find a way to do our jobs and do something in 2020. And before this year, I made the decision to kind of expand what we were doing as far as the live streaming and the podcast and turn it into a daily deal. And I was really not at all sure how that was going to go. But the participation on the live stuff, despite us moving shows around and all that, has been good, especially obviously the post-game shows and all that. But also just the number of people that are downloading these and listening to them on a daily basis. The numbers certainly are encouraging, and I kind of like this quicker daily format where, hey, we can get everything done in a 30, 40-minute show rather than feeling like we're doing a podcast and we haven't done one for a week, so it needs to last an hour. So appreciate all you guys who have been around here. And like I said, Thanksgiving's always kind of a time where you take stock of things. And I always try to say every year on Thanksgiving, like, ultimately it's work, but we get to watch football and basketball for a living, and the only reason we get to do that is because it's important enough to you guys to spend some of your time and some of your money in allowing us to. So I'm not going to say we never take that for granted. Sometimes we do take it for granted, but we try not to take it for granted, and certainly appreciate that. Even though I'm going back to work on Friday, really all that means is I'm going to watch a football game. Then I'm going to take some calls from some people who may or may not be sober to talk about the football game, and then I'm going to go watch a basketball game. So that's pretty good, right? And the only reason it works is because you guys have decided to make it work. So thanks for that. I hope everybody has a great holiday. You get a chance. I know a lot of people last year didn't really get a chance to hang out with friends and family. So I hope that you get that chance this year and take advantage of it. Again, there's no real hours in this job. If something happens Wednesday afternoon or Thursday morning or whatever, we're going to cover it, and we'll be there. We've all got our devices that we're going to stay connected with. Our goal is for nothing really to happen until 1 o'clock on Friday, and that's when we'll start the pregame show and have full coverage of football and hoops that day. But appreciate it, guys, and thanks one more time to 573 Tees. Again, they're going to have some upgrades on their website that hopefully are going to be up by this afternoon. If not this afternoon, though, sometimes technical things happen. I would certainly think by Friday, when now you guys don't have to actually leave your house and deal with all the people at the stores. Like, do your shopping online. Go to 573tees.com. Get the Mizzou fan in your life, some good stuff for Christmas. Maybe a visor to put on the stocking, and then a couple of T-shirts to wrap up, whatever. Get some stuff for your kids. I know that the folks over at 573 Tees will appreciate it. Just let them know, whether it's by an email or on Twitter or if you stop by in person, that you heard about it here on PowerMizzou.com. We will talk to you guys on Friday, and who knows, maybe before if something happens. But appreciate you joining us. Catch up later.